Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana
Janaranjan
Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, good morning to everyone. This morning we're reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto number 3, chapter number 25, entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. And today we're reading from text number 26. So if you can repeat after me. Bhaktya pumanjata viraga indriyad Drishta shrutan mad rachuna nuchintaya. Chitasya to grahane yoga yukto. Yate shatir jubira yoga marge. Bhaktya pumanjata viraga indriyad. Drishta shrutan mad rachuna nuchintaya. Chitasya to grahane yoga yukto. Yate shatir jubir yoga marge. Bhaktya pumanjata viraga indriyad. Drishta shrutad mad ranjarchana nuchintaya. Chitasya to grahane yoga yukto. Yate shatir jubir yoga marge. Pumanjata viraga indriyad. Pumanjata viraga indriyad. Shashatan mad rachana nuchintaya. Yujubir yoga marge. Matajis. Bhaktya pumanjata viraga indriyad. Drishta shutad mad rachana nuchintaya. Chitasya yato grahane yoga yukto. Yate shate rijubir yoga marge. Bhaktya, by devotional service, Puman, a person, Jata Viraga, having developed distaste, Indriyat, for sense gratification, Drishta, seen in this world, Shrutat, heard in the next world, Matrachana, my activities of creation and so on. Anuchintaya, by constantly thinking about. Chittasya, of the mind, yataha, engaged, grahane, in the control, yoga yukta, situated in devotional service, yatishyate, will endeavor, rijubi, easy, yoga marge, by the process of mystic power. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Shlesi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation: thus consciously engaged in devotional service in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification, both in this world and in the next, by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. Purport. In all scriptures, people are encouraged to act in a pious way so that they can enjoy sense gratification not only in this life but also in the next. For example, one is promised promotion to the heavenly kingdom of the higher planets by pious fruitive activities. But a devotee in the association of devotees prefers to contemplate the activities of the Lord, how He has created this universe, how He is maintaining it, how the creation dissolves, and how in the spiritual kingdom the Lord's pastimes are going on. There are full literatures describing these activities of the Lord, especially Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Samhita, and Śrimad Bhāgavatam. The sincere devotee who associates with devotees gets the opportunity to hear and contemplate this subject of the pastimes of the Lord, and the result is that he feels distaste for so-called happiness in this or that world, in heaven or on other planets. The devotees are simply interested in being transferred to the personal association of the Lord. They have no more attraction for temporary so-called happiness. That is the position of one who is yoga yukta. One who is fixed in mystic power is not disturbed by the allurement of this world or that world. He is interested in the matters of the spiritual understanding of the spiritual situation. This sublime situation is very easily attained by the easiest process, bhakti yoga. Rijubir yoga marge, a very suitable word used here is rijubi, or very easy. There are different processes of yoga marg, attaining yoga perfection, but this process, devotional service to the Lord, is the easiest. Not only is it the easiest process, but the result is sublime. Everyone, therefore, should try to take this process of Krishna consciousness and reach the highest perfection of life. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapanantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki. So with your permission, I'll try to share some words on this very beautiful verse of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam. Kapila Dev is instructing his mother on devotional service. We can understand in every canto of the Bhāgavatam, devotional service is glorified. And canto number 3 is no different. So here, as Kapila Dev is explaining Sankhya Yoga to his mother Devahuti, is ultimately establishing that pure devotional service is the perfection of everything. And here in this verse is explaining that one of the classic signs of developing pure devotional service is that one develops a complete distaste for material enjoyment. Sometimes we may wonder, am I advancing, am I not advancing? So here is a clear-cut indicator. How much distaste does one have for sense gratification? Once in Vrindavan, one person, he came up to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and he said, Swamiji, I was on the banks of the Yamuna and I saw Krishna. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur looked at him and he said, did you also see Maya? Are you also seeing Maya? He says, yes, sometimes I also see a bit of Maya. He said, then you did not see Krishna. Because Krishna Surya Sama hoya Maya Andhakar, yaha Krishna, taha nahi Maya Radhikar. If you're actually seeing Krishna, if you're actually in contact with Krishna, if you're actually feeling the presence of Krishna in your life, then Maya disappears. Because Krishna is just like the sun which dissipates all the darkness. And thus, even Krishna mentions the same thing. Bhogeshwarya prashaktanam taya parita chetasham vyavasayatmaka buddhir samadho nuvidhiyate. Krishna says, if you're still attached to bhoga, enjoyment, and aishwarya, opulence, you can't be resolutely engaged in devotional service because the two don't go together. And therefore, the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat both show a complete disregard for material enjoyment. It's very interesting if you look at the Gita, the Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they are actually a transcendental sequence. Because the Bhagavad Gita begins with Krishna telling Arjuna, Dehinosmin yatha dehe, you're not the body, you're the soul. And by the end of the conversation, Krishna tells Arjuna, therefore, sarva dharman parityaja, mamekam saranam braja. Give up all other cheating religion, materially motivated religion, and just surrender to me. And then where does the Bhagavatam begin? In the same place where the Gita left off. Because the Bhagavatam begins, dharma projita ketavo traparamo nirmatsaranam satam. This Bhagavat Purana throws away all materially motivated religion and propounds the highest truth for the benefit of humanity. And then where does the Bhagavatam end? The very final verse of the Bhagavatam says, Nama sankirtanam yasya sarva papa pranashanam. Just surrender to the process of Nam Sankirtan. So then where does Chaitanya Charitamrita begin? E mata bhakta bhav kori angikar apani achari bhakti korila prachar I'll explain how to practice the process of Nam Sankirtan, Korila Prachar, by doing it myself, Apani Achari, by my own example, Mahaprabhu says. And then Mahaprabhu engages in the process of Nam Sankirtan, and then where does Chaitanya Charitamrita end? Kiba mantra, dile goshai, kibe tarabal, japite japite mantra, korila pagal. I'm chanting this mantra again and again and again, and I'm becoming completely mad. So that's basically the process from Bhagavad Gita through Śrimad Bhāgavatam to Chaitanya Charitamrita, is it begins with tattva, and then it ultimately ends in a complete absorption in the Lord, which renders one completely oblivious to sense gratification. And therefore, this is the real test. This is the real test, that the devotee is completely different from everyone else in the world, because a devotee has no interest in the things which are incredibly cherished by the people out there. Once a devotee read this verse to Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, Krishna says, Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagarti bhutani sanisa pasyato mune. So this devotee read this verse to Prabhupada. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the introspective sage, and the time of awakening for all living beings is night for the introspective sage. So devotee looked at Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, what is the meaning of this? Prabhupada looked at him and said, they think you are mad and you think they're mad. That was the purport that Srila Prabhupada gave. That what is attractive, what is important, what is of deep interest to the conditioned soul is completely unimportant for the devotee, and vice versa. So here we're seeing that Kapila Dev is telling Devahuti, Jata viraga, having developed a complete distaste. All the prayers are telling us this, isn't it? Yamunacharya says, Yadavadi mamacheta Krishna padara vinde nava nava rasa dhaman yudyatam rantumashet. He says, since I've developed a taste for devotional service, every time I think of sex desire, then my lips curl in distaste and I spit at the thought. So who is having that kind of a distaste? Most people are seeking that taste. It's interesting, I think it was here in New York actually that Srila Prabhupada was walking with Jadurani Mataji on an early morning walk. And of course the early morning means the late night for the rest of the world. And so I think there were two ladies and they were walking back from a club night out, and it was absolutely freezing, but they were in mini skirts and high heels. And of course Jadurani Mataji and the other ladies were there in saris, so they were walking and then they saw the sight. And Prabhupada said, just see, they are doing so much austerity for sense gratification, and you are doing so much austerity for Krishna. So yes, this is what is going on in the world today. But yesterday at the program we were talking that one cannot give up the taste for sense gratification unless one is experiencing something higher. The word vairagya means renunciation, isn't it? But vairagya has a double meaning. Vairagya means renunciation, but vairagya also means vishesha raga. Vishesha means special, and raga means attachment. So the Sanskrit word for detachment or renunciation simultaneously means a special type of attachment. Because without a special type of attachment, one can never become detached from this world. There are different levels of renunciation or detachment. The lowest level of renunciation or detachment is when one gives something up because they're frustrated. Srila Prabhupada said this was the situation of the hippies, that they became very renounced, but it was renunciation out of frustration because they didn't like the way the world was. But then there's a higher type of renunciation, which is renunciation out of knowledge, when one realizes, no, this is not good, this is not progressive for my life. But the highest type of renunciation is renunciation out of taste or out of a special attachment to something higher. Krishna confirms the same thing in the Bhagavad Gita. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasovarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. That only when one gives up the lower taste, having experienced the higher taste, can they be fixed in consciousness. It's even interesting when Rupa Goswami outlines the symptoms of bhav, then he says deep detachment or renunciation from material things is a symptom of bhav. Kshantiravyartha kalatvam viraktir manashunyata. Virakti means a deep type of detachment because one has developed a higher spiritual emotion. So most of the world is not able to give up sense gratification because they don't have anything better. It's very interesting, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami makes these statements which almost seem, if you didn't know him better, fanatical. For example, he will make a statement like, anyone who doesn't believe in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a demon. And you think like, wow, that's a little strong, no? It's like the born-again Hare Krishnas. Anyone who doesn't believe in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a demon. Put your hand up if you agree. Put your hand up if you're not sure. Yeah, there's some doubts there. Huh? What does it mean? So for for a long time I was thinking about this, like this sounds a little heavy, like there are nice people out there. What about those of other Vaishnav paths that don't accept Mahaprabhu? Are they demons? And then it was interesting, one Sanskrit scholar, he told me the definition of a demon. What is a demon in Sanskrit? Asura. So he said, according to the Sanskrit dictionary, you know what asura is? Ashushu ramate iti asura. This is the strict dictionary definition of asura. Ashushu ramate iti asura. Who is an asura? Anyone who enjoys in the senses is an asura. So now, then it begins to make more sense. Oh, if you don't accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you don't accept the process of Nam Sankirtan, if you don't accept the process of devotional service, then how will you develop the higher taste which will allow you to give up the sense gratification that will then free you from being a demon? Then you think like, yeah, maybe it's not such a fanatical statement. Maybe it makes sense. Because the only way to get a higher taste in Kali Yuga, Hare Nam Eva Kevalam, is only through the holy name of Krishna. And unless one accesses that level of experience, how they will be able to give up sense gratification? Not possible. Therefore, the Goswamis are very, very important for us, because the Goswamis are basically teaching us how to experience rasa. Krishna is the rasa Raj. He's the king of all rasa. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the one who's tasting rasa. Prem ras nir yas korite ashvadhan. Raga marga bhakti loke korite pracharn. So Krishna is the king of rasa. Mahaprabhu is the one experiencing rasa, the rasa shraya. But then Rupa Goswami is the rasa acharya. He's the one who is teaching, training, and empowering the whole world how to experience rasa. So the first thing he does is he explains where is rasa to be found. Akila rasamrita murti. The place, the complete embodiment and the sitting place of all rasa is the Akila Rasamrita Murti, which is Krishna. And then he explains who can experience the sweetness of Krishna. Then you have to become a Rasika Bhakta, one who has good taste. And then he explains the process of how to become a Rasika Bhakta. And then Rupa Goswami explains in his Rasa theology, what is that experience when one is actually experiencing this bhakti rasa with Krishna. And he explains that's rasamrita sindhu, that's an ocean of mellows. And he breaks all of that down. So Rupa Goswami, as the Rasacharya, he explains who is the object of rasa. He explains what is that devotee who can experience that rasa. And then he explains what is the experience of that rasa like. And in this way, he gives the complete theology. The first thing is he explains that Krishna is the Rasamrita Murti, the complete abode of rasa. You see, the Bhagavatam explains who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ete chamsha kalapumsha Krishna's tu Bhagavan Svayam. But if the Bhagavatam explains who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Goswamis are the ones who explain who is the Supreme Personality of Krishna. Because Krishna has many, many forms. Yes, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Krishna has many, many forms, many, many personas. And therefore the Goswamis very, very clearly outline which is the most charming, intimate, lovable, enchanting, colorful, charismatic form of Krishna. And that is Krishna in Vrindavan. Aradhyo Bhagavan Vraje Satanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupashana Vrajavadu Vargena Ya Kalpita. So like this, the Goswamis illuminate Krishna as the ultimate object, the ultimate form, the ultimate embodiment of rasa. And anyone who approaches Krishna will begin to have the opportunity to taste this sweetness. Once I was actually traveling in West Africa. So I was in one city called Benin. So I went to the market. And there was this one person, he had a bunch of things he was selling. But in the corner, I saw these DVDs, Little Krishna, in the midst of all of this other cigarette lighters and everything, those Little Krishna DVDs. I thought, wow, he's like an undercover bridge preacher. So I looked at him and I said, Haribo, and he didn't get it. So I could understand he wasn't a devotee. So I was thinking, why is he selling Little Krishna DVDs? So I asked him, what's this? So he said, this is about a boy. It's a DVD about a boy. I said, like, what's it about? He goes, this boy, he runs around, he steals things. He goes up with these demons in the sky and then he pulls them down. He like knocks out these horses by punching them in the mouth, and he's giving me full Krishna Leela. And I'm like, who is that? He said, that's Krishna. I said, who's Krishna? And then he looked at him and he goes, I don't know who Krishna is, but he's a bad man. That's what he said to me. It was very interesting. He had just seen the DVDs on the internet and he thought, this is an amazing cartoon. People are going to love this. They're going to fall in love with this person. So he just ripped it off YouTube and he, burned it onto a DVD and he just started selling it. It was amazing. So Krishna is so sweet. Krishna is the form of rasa. So Rupa Goswami explains this to the world. And then Rupa Goswami explains, but to be able to taste Krishna's sweetness, you have to become a rasika. It's not open to everyone. What is the Bhagavatam? We hear at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukha mukhad amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam. Drink the Bhagavatam, which is the abode of rasa, because it gives all the pastimes of Krishna. But in order to do that, muhuraho, if you're going to do that, rasika, you have to become a person who has good taste, a connoisseur of good taste. One English writer, he sums up the rasa theology with one line. He says, rasa theology means the taster tastes the taste because they have good taste. That's basically rasa theology. The taster tastes the taste because they have good taste. If you don't have good taste, you won't be able to relish the taste of Krishna, because one is not tuned, one doesn't have the sensitivity. But when one has that sensitivity, when one is purified, Ata Shri Krishna Nama Di Na Bhavet Grayam Indriye. Your blunt material senses cannot. But when your senses are purified, when you develop good taste, then you can. And therefore, the second thing Rupa Goswami explains is how to become a rasika. And therefore, he explains, Ado Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Sango Tha Bhajana Kriya Anartha Nivritti Shat Tato Nishta Ruchis Tatha. He's explaining all the steps that one has to go through in order to purify their consciousness so that their heart becomes sensitive to the stimulation of Krishna. And when one does, then Rupa Goswami explains what is the experience of rasa that you have when you become a rasika. So it's very, very amazing. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he breaks down what is the experience of rasa. Sthai bhav, vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav, vyabhicharini bhav. He explains these are the 5 components of rasa, and when they combine in unlimited ways, then they create different experiences within the consciousness of the living entity. I'll just explain it very, very simply, because sometimes it can be a little bit puzzling. Rupa Goswami explains that everyone, first of all, will have a sthai bhav, a permanent ecstatic mood towards Krishna. So to use a mundane example, we could use the example of a mother for a child. So the mother for the child, if you imagine, the sthai bhav is motherly love. That's the sthai bhav. And then Rupa Goswami says, in the relationship of love, what will happen is there will be a vibhav. A vibhav means a stimulant. So now you can imagine there's a mother and a child, and the mother has motherly love for the child. That's the sthai bhav. But then what happens is that the child trips over. So that child tripping over is the vibhav, it's the stimulant. It's that which now awakens a trigger of emotions. And then Rupa Goswami says the next thing that happens is anubhav, which means a voluntary expression of one's ecstasy. So imagine the mother has motherly love for the child. She's looking at the child trips up. Then what does the mother do? The mother runs towards the child and grabs hold of the child. That is anubhav, voluntary expression of ecstasy. And then the next thing that happens is sattvika bhav, which means involuntary expression of love. So in the example, the mother sees the child trips over, she runs over, she picks up the child, and then naturally when she picks up the child, she starts crying, tears of ecstasy, tears of happiness. That is sattvika bhav. And then Rupa Goswami says the next thing that happens is vyabhicharini bhav, which is an emotional state that then overtakes the person who is experiencing rasa. So in this example, the mother picks up the child, hugs the child, starts crying, and then imagine she puts her cheek to the child's cheek and she sees that the child has a fever. So then she's overcome by anxiety, the emotion of anxiety. This is like a vyabhicharini bhav. So like this, Rupa Goswami breaks down what is the actual experience of someone who is in a relationship of rasa with Krishna. He says there's sthai bhav, vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav, vyabhicharini bhav, and they mix in unlimited permutations to awaken an experience that then means that all other things disappear into insignificance. And therefore, this is what we're reading about here, that Kapila Dev is saying to Devahuti, that when one actually develops a genuine experience of Krishna consciousness, then that rasa is so powerful that it drowns out and makes all other rasa completely insignificant. And in this way, one can understand that yes, here is someone who is actually in communion with Krishna because they have no more anything to do with the material world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So maybe I'll just stop here, see if anyone has any questions or comments or anything you would like to add. Yes,
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. We say that Krishna is all attractive, but it seemed from your definition of rasika that he's only all attractive to those who have a taste for Krishna. And if you don't have a taste, I mean, we experience this in the mundane and material things. Something may be extraordinarily attractive to some, and yet to others not. So how does that work? If he's all attractive, but then he's not all attractive to those who don't have the taste, how does that work?
So in what sense is Krishna all attractive? Because clearly we see in the world today that not everyone is attracted to Krishna. So we can understand Krishna is all attractive because he has the ability, he's the only one in creation who has the ability and the potentiality to attract everyone. The potentiality is there. But in order to activate that potentiality, then the living entity has to give up the lust. Just like a magnet can attract anything, but when there is rust, then it's not the fault of the magnet. It's just that that rust has to be cleared. Therefore, when the rust of lust is cleared, then naturally one is being drawn towards Krishna. Jiva Goswami gives a definition of Bhagavan. He says, Bhajaniya Guna Vasista. He says this is what Bhagavan is. One whose qualities are so enchanting that one cannot resist but engage in his service. But in order for one to activate that potentiality of attraction, Krishna does not force himself upon anyone. And therefore, when the living entities clear their artificial state, then the attraction to Krishna is natural, spontaneous, and is potential within every single living entity. So in that way, Krishna is all attractive, because the potentiality is there within every living entity to have that relationship with him. But you can respond if you're not, or if you feel.
I was also thinking that for most people, they actually don't even see Krishna. That when they, because of Maya, because of the coverings that they have, Krishna is covered to them. The all-attractive quality of Krishna is actually covered to their perception because of their conditioning. And therefore, as that conditioning is cleared away, then that natural attraction then you actually begin to perceive Krishna as he is, then you can't help to be attracted.
Yeah.
But when your eyes, similar to that premanjana charita bhakti kalochanena, that it's when the eyes are tinged with love that one actually sees Krishna.
Yeah. We could also see it like what George Harrison says in the beginning of the Krishna book, that everyone is looking for Krishna. Some know it, some don't know it. So in one sense we can say they're not, it doesn't seem as though they're looking for Krishna. But who is Krishna? Krishna is Bhagavan. And who is Bhagavan? Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasha shriya jnana vairagyayascheva sanam bhaga itingana. Bhagavan is all wealth, all strength, all knowledge, all beauty, all fame, and all renunciation. So who in the world is not looking for these things? They're looking for the right thing, but they're looking in the wrong place. And therefore, in one sense, everyone is looking for Krishna because they're looking to connect with someone who's strong, someone who's famous, someone who's beautiful. They're looking for that. So, but they're looking in the wrong place. So, yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi Krishna, thank you for such a nice class. I feel a little bit hung up when you said the demon thing about like anybody who doesn't accept Mahaprabhu. And I was just thinking, because sometimes, especially when we're preaching, we tell people it doesn't matter what name of God you chant, like any name will work. And so it seems like someone could be doing Nam Sankirtan without even knowing Mahaprabhu. So maybe you can clarify?
Yeah. So I was mentioning that how do we understand this statement that anyone who doesn't believe in Mahaprabhu is a demon? Of course, we can also see that this is just the ecstatic outpouring of Kaviraj Goswami, and he's not necessarily making a deep philosophical, Siddhantic point here. He's just kind of, it's an exhibition, of his deep love for Mahaprabhu. Like, for example, you find this in individuals. For example, like Prabodhananda Saraswati, who has deep love for Mahaprabhu, he makes these statements like, what was the point of Lord Ram coming to the universe? What was the value of Varahadev? What was the point of Nishingadev killing Hiranyakashipu? All these things are insignificant. The main thing is that Mahaprabhu has come to deliver pure love. So it's not necessarily that he's making a deep philosophical point there, but it's just an exhibition of his deep love for Mahaprabhu. So we can also see it like that. But yes, we can also see it that the sweetness contained in the name of Krishna is a level of sweetness that is not found in any other name of God. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukta Bhinatvan Nama Namino. Krishna's name is Chintamani, is Purna, Shuddha, Nitya Mukta. It has Rupa Goswami says, I do not know how much nectar there is in the two syllables, Krishna. Even we hear in Shastra that, 1,000 names of Vishnu are equal to one name of Ram, and 3 names of Ram are equal to one name of Krishna. So we can understand that the name of Krishna is the concentrated form of sweetness. And in an age of Kali Yuga, where the assault of the material energy and temptation is so strong, unless one is experiencing another type of extreme sweetness, it will become very, very difficult to resist that temptation. And therefore, when we encourage people to chant Krishna's names, it's in that spirit that there's a level of sweetness and intimacy of relationship that one will gain with the divine through these names that you won't be able to necessarily find elsewhere. But that's not to say that others can't make advancement, others can't be saintly in their own way. But there's always that risk, because the sweetness of Krishna is very, very special and unique.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's hands here. I don't know, you just tell me when I should stop. I don't know.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, I appreciate that progression you were making from Bhagavad Gita to Bhagavatam to Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, while philosophically I may understand this information that I've gathered from reading the scriptures, realization is not there. Even realization that I'm not this body. So how can I actually come to the point of fully appreciating what's being given if I haven't even realized it? So sometimes maybe faith might even be as strong as it can be, because I'm just like, okay, yeah, Krishna is so sweet, his name is so, but I haven't even gotten to the point that I'm realizing that I'm not my body. So if that makes sense.
So how do we actually realize all of this knowledge? And there could be different ways to answer that. But in the Gita, if you look at the different verses, Krishna shows that knowledge never stands in isolation. Knowledge always has to be accompanied by other things. For example, Krishna will say in the Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Shampanne. Knowledge has to be accompanied with gentleness, with humility. Or in another chapter of the Gita, Krishna will say, Idam te na tapashkaya na bhaktaya kadachana. That one who is not austere cannot understand this knowledge. Therefore, knowledge has to be accompanied by austerity. Later on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will explain, Shraddhaval labate jnanam. That knowledge can be attained by a faithful person. Knowledge has to be accompanied by faith. Krishna in another verse will say, Tatpara shamyatendriya, that knowledge has to be accompanied by control of the mind and senses. Then the knowledge will be able to be activated. Mahaprabhu himself will say, Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga, that along with vidya, there has to be renunciation. So the main reason that knowledge is not entering into a deeper space within our heart is because we may have cultivated knowledge, but have we cultivated all the other things that have to go with knowledge? Spiritual knowledge is state specific. So your ability to absorb it will be dependent on how much you've imbibed the other qualities that Krishna talks about. And therefore Krishna will even say in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sa evaya maya tedya yoga prokta puratana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hyetad uttamam. Krishna will say, I'm speaking this supreme science to you, Arjun, because you are my devotee and my friend, and therefore you can understand the mystery of this knowledge. So, knowledge has to be accompanied by character. Otherwise, just reading books won't be enough. One has to also have the right type of character. Otherwise, that knowledge won't penetrate into a deeper space. Therefore, one must have the right character. And then we also understand that the Vedic process of learning is Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. So also, if you want the knowledge to go on a deeper level, there has to be deep contemplation, deep reflection, and then there has to be application. One has to read things and then change their life based on what they're reading, change their approach, their attitude. And when we bring the knowledge into the world, into our lives, then it enters into a deeper space within our heart. So it's a great science. Of course, the other thing is that this knowledge has to be ultimately also received from a devotee, Tattvadarshi, that one must serve another Vaishnav, one must inquire from them, one must please them. They once asked Srila Prabhupada, what's the most important verse in the Vedic literature? At different times, Prabhupada said different things. But on this occasion, he said, Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyaite katita hyartha prakashante mahatmana. That all the imports of the Vedic literatures are revealed to someone who has the same faith that he has in Krishna, he also has in the spiritual master. And therefore, so we can see that there is knowledge, but then there is a lot of things around it. Your character, your application, your connection with the Tattvadarshi, all of these other things are there, which only if they are also in place will this knowledge really penetrate one's heart in a deeper way. And therefore it's a great science.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This verse and things you were speaking on it reminded me of a couple different things, and I just wanted to share those and then ask a question based on them. There's a purport from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the 10th canto, and he says that one who glorifies Krishna's Rasa Leela is actually a really learned person, because he doesn't foolishly think that the kama must leave the heart before the prema can come in. And you're sharing this, the Param Drishtana Nivartate verse, and I was also thinking about this pastime with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta at Radhakund. He was saying that if we focus primarily on anartha-nivritti but not artha-pravritti, then ultimately things will end up in nirvisheshavad. So I wanted to ask, based on that, what does anartha-nivritti practically mean for us? Because I think there's many conceptions about, how to achieve anartha-nivritti, but it kind of seems like maybe we have to just dive deep into the thing, and then that's how anartha-nivritti, the process is activated.
So what is you're asking? What is the process of
What is-
anartha-nivritti?
Yeah, what does anartha-nivritti mean for us practically?
Okay.
Because it seems that sometimes the understanding is that we need to practice anartha-nivritti without cultivating
A positive.
positive qualities. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anartha, well, of course, we know anartha means that which has no value. So there are desires within our heart, there are character traits, qualities, there are mindsets, there are attitudes. All of these things are sitting there within our consciousness which are not favorable to the development of pure devotional service. So, therefore, when those things are cleared, you can kind of think of it like, like there's a river which is trying to flow to the ocean, but then there's all these things which are kind of in the way of that flow. And as soon as you start getting rid of those things, then it naturally just flows. So that's basically the problem right now, that we're chanting, we're reading, but we're not experiencing. The Bhagavatam says that, tadasmasadam hridayam batedam, that you're hearing, you're chanting, but your hairs are not standing on end, your tears are not flowing from your eyes, means you have a steel-framed heart. So right now, the flow of that bhakti is not happening because there's too many unhelpful things sitting within us which is blocking. And so the process of anartha-nivritti is to remove all of those blocks. But as you mentioned, we are not simply focusing on removing the negative, but we're also focusing on intensifying the flow. So if you imagine using that same metaphor, is flowing. We're trying to create that flow to the ocean. Now, one way to do it, to make the flow faster, is to try to remove the blocks. But the other way to make the flow faster is you just add more pressure from this side. And when you add more pressure from this side, then naturally many of those things would just give way with the pressure. So both things are happening side by side. We're working on both things. Another example is like, I guess here in New York you have so much graffiti, right? So you see like a graffiti wall. If you want to clean it up, there's two things you can do. One is you can get a sponge and a bucket of water and start trying to scrub it out. And that's good. And then what you can do on top of that is you can just paint over it. And if you do both things, then it'll be quicker to get it clean. Because you basically dim the old thing and then paint over with the new thing. So basically we're doing both. And if we try to, it's interesting in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, in the final verse of the Chatushloki, I can't remember it exactly, but it says that one should search for the absolute truth both directly and indirectly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the commentary given by the acharyas on that verse, they say, what does it mean to search for the Lord indirectly? And the commentary given is to search for the Lord indirectly means to get rid of all of those things which are diverting one from. So we are searching for the Lord directly and indirectly. Directly by developing artha pravritti, a great taste and attraction, and indirectly by removing those things which are distracting us, both things side by side. Okay. Thank
you. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful words. I was just looking at the verse and I saw it says, thus consciously engaged in devotional service in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification. And then the last line, when one is actually situated in the path of devotional service, he is able to control his mind. so I could be wrong, but the way I was seeing it is that the root of all that is consciously engaged in devotional service. So how do I become more conscious when I'm engaging in devotional service? Because I still have so much taste for sense enjoyment, and I have no control over my mind.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like when we chant, what we're doing is we're doing in stages, in one sense. Like the first thing is at least try to be physically present, like be there in body. Try to pronounce the name clearly on a physical level. And then what's happening is that we're trying to then bring the mind to be attentive to now, you're not just pronouncing clear, but you're trying to bring your mind to now be attentive to the process of what you're doing. And then later on, what you're trying to do then on top of that is you're trying to bring the heart, to bring some love, to bring some desperation, to bring some genuine desire. And so this is basically what's happening in devotional service is in the beginning, we're just kind of showing up and doing the thing. But then we're trying to be more conscious of the goal and the reason and the purpose behind the activities that we're doing. And then eventually we're trying to do it with a little bit of love, with a little bit of attention, with actually some genuine sensitivity towards how Krishna is receiving this service. And therefore the devotee has to, in this way, just try to become more and more conscious. To become conscious first on the practical level of how they render their devotional service. Then on top of that, to become more conscious on the mental level as to why they're actually doing this. And then to become conscious on the heart level of the person that they're doing it for and how they're receiving this service. And in this way, as one practices Krishna consciousness and devotional service, with greater and greater presence, with greater and greater conscious presence, then one is having a deeper and deeper experience. And so yeah, that's why devotional service is unlimited in how it can be developed, because the quality in this sense can be refined more and more over time. And so yes, after some time, it's not so much about the quantity of devotional service that one is doing. One is also having to pay a lot of attention in terms of the quality of what is my presence in the service that I'm doing. Just some thoughts. I guess we could say more on that, but. So thank you so much. I think we've run out of time this morning. Thank you for your attention and for being here. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.